Do you ever feel like creating content for YouTube is like this massive, complicated problem that you just can't solve? What if I told you there's a better way, there's a new way that's actually getting results on YouTube that doesn't require any editing or scripting or any of the hard stuff that comes along with getting started on YouTube? Today, we're breaking down the easiest ways for beginners to get started on YouTube and to consistently be able to pump out content without killing themselves. This is the episode for you. We're going to be giving you guys actionable tips that you can take and actually implement to pump out more content than you ever thought possible. All right, Grant, I'm really excited to talk about this today because we're starting to see this change on YouTube. Before, it was about, all this kind of retention demon editing that we talk about, where you got to do all this crazy stuff at the beginning to keep people watching, to kind of a more authentic look with minimal editing, which is good for the beginner. Don't you agree that that's good for the beginner?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously it's a lot less complicated to make a video where the editing is not nearly as intensive. You're not having to cut to something new every 5 seconds or 3 seconds or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's more beginner friendly for sure.
And that's not only what this episode is about. That's just a small part. Let's go ahead and dive right into step number 1, which is staying in your zone of genius. Now, what I mean by this is if you're a beginner and you're like, I don't know what to make videos about, I don't know what to do, I'm supposed to find all these other topics, do this keyword research, don't forget all about that. Like, what can you just hit record on right now and just talk for like 5 hours about? Do that. Start with that. That's your zone of genius. This is going to allow you to stay more authentic and just not have to struggle coming up with different topics. Grant, what would you say your zone of genius is? And have you ever kind of tried this method, and how did it turn out for you?
Sure. So my zone of genius is in the kind of philosophical, I guess, spiritual worldview kind of thing, which maybe is a weird thing to say, but the way I initially got into it, as probably a lot of our viewers know, is my video game channel Treesicle that I started over 10 years ago at this point. By we, I mean my team and I made philosophical videos about video game characters, and they were funny and silly and informative, but there was kind of a metaphysical spin to everything. And so in that sense, like, I knew video games, I knew philosophy, and kind of had this, I guess, unique way of looking at things that worked well for entertainment. So those were kind of my two zones of genius, was video games that I grew up playing and played a lot in college and, just throughout my life. And then this worldview I had, and then kind of merged the two. And somehow it worked out beyond my wildest dreams. So that's my zone of genius. And as far as like how I discovered it, I feel like it was more of an accident. It was just kind of like, I had some friends who wanted to start a YouTube channel. I was like, that sounds fun. So I joined them in that venture. That it happened to be a video game channel. We wanted to make scripted content, and then I just so happened to, make a philosophical script about Samus Aran from Metroid, and it just kind of happened.
Yeah, and the good part about staying in your zone of genius is that you get to kind of create content that you enjoy creating. I know, Grant, you love being philosophical. That's your thing. And if anybody that listens to this podcast, they know. So you enjoy it, right? It's fun for you. Video games, philosophy, that's kind of your thing. You mix them together, and there you go, a successful YouTube channel. Now, for the people that are listening right now, how do you think beginners can identify their zone of genius? And if they're not sure what it is yet, like, what's some tips? How can they figure that out?
Yeah, the biggest thing is just, what do you find yourself thinking about without you having to put in any effort? So if you're just alone in your room, where does your brain go? Does it go to politics? Does it go to philosophy? Does it go to video games? Like, what is this thing that your brain is always trying to figure out or understand or get new information about? That's your zone of genius. Because in my opinion, genius pretty much always comes from a place of passion and childlike curiosity. So the only thing you're ever going to be a genius about is something that you love. And by love, I just mean it could even be obsession or just something that you are always wanting to focus on. So I think we all have something like that, some kind of topic, whether it's cars or football or whatever. That's your zone of genius.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the good thing about Zone of Genius is that you don't have to go and write some super long script out word for word. I remember when I used to create basketball training tutorials, like that was my Zone of Genius back then. And I didn't script a single thing. I would literally go to the gym with my wife as the camera woman, and I would have just topics. It'd be like, how to dribble through the legs or how to go
Mhm.
behind the back. Those were all just different video topics, and I had no bullet points even or anything. And I was able to just hit record, deliver all the content that I needed to. And it was, I mean, I would one take videos. I remember I like one took like 40 videos in the first time we went and recorded because I thought that's what you're
Wow.
supposed to do. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was just all one takes. I mean, I could never do that just sitting as a talking head video nowadays. I mean, just recording this intro today, right? I had to do a couple takes, but yeah, it's so when you're in your zone of genius, everything just becomes easier. All right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the second kind of easy way to create content for beginners, and that's repurposing content. Now, typically, most people talk about repurposing as you take your 10-minute long YouTube video and you cut it up into vertical shorts for YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, TikToks, and that's kind of repurposing. But there's other ways you can repurpose for YouTube. For example, if you have a newsletter and you write a weekly newsletter, you can take those newsletters and you can create a YouTube video, and boom, right there, it's already kind of scripted out for you. It's all done for you, and you can just create a YouTube video off it. You could also repurpose tweets or repurpose even other people's content. For example, maybe you watch somebody and on YouTube and you really enjoy it and they create a video that's something you think is really great. You can take that and create your own version. And it's easier than coming up with something from scratch. And it's you don't want to copy, and there's no copying here, right? It's just getting inspiration from another video and then taking it and putting your own spin on it. For example, let's say this video here, how to grow on YouTube for beginners. You could go and make your own video, how to do your taxes for beginners if you have a YouTube channel about taxes or something like that, right? There's inspiration all around you, and just take that content and you can repurpose it for yourself. This is a great method, and something that a lot of people I'm starting to see do with their newsletters or their blog posts is they'll repurpose the content. So Grant, have you ever repurposed content for your own YouTube channel or other platforms? And if so, what was the outcome?
Honestly, I don't know if I have like directly. I've definitely like watched. So, for instance, making a Little Nightmares video. So, Little Nightmares is a video game. It's kind of a horror game that we made a lot of videos about. I would watch other YouTube videos on it and try to like, it was essentially doing research, right? I didn't feel like I ever took one particular video and repurposed it, but I did like get inspiration from a lot of different videos and then kind of put it all together with my own spin. Um, so I guess in that sense, I would repurpose things. I think inspiration and repurposing maybe are different, but yeah, I'm trying to think if, but I don't think I ever directly repurposed anything that I can think of.
Yeah, you guys weren't, putting out a newsletter or doing any kind of written content. That's kind of the main strategy of repurposing. And you're right. I mean, finding inspiration might be a little bit different, like I talked about earlier. But here's how you do it. Okay, here's how you
Hmm.
do it. And to me, it's pretty similar, right? So every social media platform has a bookmark or a save button, right? Even Google Chrome, right? You can bookmark pages. So as you're consuming content throughout the week, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere, if you come across something that you like, you just bookmark it. Now, the cool part too is when you bookmark it or save it, a lot of these platforms will allow you to kind of add it to a folder. So you can have a bunch of different folders for different kind of subtopics of your niche, and you can just constantly be putting things in there. So when you go to try to come up with a video topic, you can just go to your Instagram, open up your saved posts, and you can look through them and be like, I want to make one about, entrepreneurship. And you click on that folder. There's a bunch of different content there that you can click on and find inspiration and kind of repurpose it. So that's a strategy that I've been using, and it's been very helpful, at least, to come up with newsletter ideas and stuff like that. So that's repurposing content. Um, Now, if you don't have any other kind of content to go off of, then this method is not really for you. But this next method could be, and that's reaction videos. Whether it's you're going to create a short form video on this or a long form, reaction videos do very well, and they're pretty easy to come up with. Grant, we've talked a little bit about reaction videos. Do you actually enjoy watching those? Do you ever watch reaction videos?
Occasionally, if it's something that is particularly interesting and I want somebody else's take on it. I mean, generally, I find them kind of annoying where, they're like stopping and starting the video and offering their own commentary. It's like the original video is 20 minutes and the reaction video is like an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like I would generally rather watch the original video, but there is clearly a huge audience for reaction videos, and it is, I think, a valid form of entertainment as long as it's done correctly, as long as you're offering a unique perspective and you're not just kind of sitting in the corner of the video while it plays for most of it. I think there is a time and place for commentary on videos that are worth commentating on. So I mean, you have like Asmongold, he does that all the time. XQC, he who has also kind of been accused of not reacting well to things, just sort of getting up and leaving, and his chair is in the bottom right corner. That was a few years ago. I haven't really kept up with him since, but the point is reaction content. It works well. It's easy to make because you don't have to script anything. You have a video, you record yourself reacting to it, you record your screen as things are going on, you kind of sync the footage, and it's pretty easy to do. Like, you don't need a ton of technical knowledge, you don't need to write anything, you kind of just gotta sit in front of a camera and blah bitty blah blah bitty blah. This is how I feel, and then bam, you got a video. So I say go for it if that interests you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good content format for experts. I see it mostly like on shorts where, there'll be the video playing and a person kind of just watching it, and this is what's on the screen right now, and they'll kind of give their take and they'll like approve it or deny it, saying like, this is not true. Like this, you can't get, this kind of return in the stock market. It's just not possible. This video here is lying. Or they'll say like, I verify this. This is right. This is actually a great technique to use. And people are making like just pumping out the shorts doing that, just reacting and giving their kind of approval or denial of the content. So that stuff seems to perform well. I see a lot of people doing that. And you might want to try it if you do create kind of advice or tutorial or whatever type of content. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about this next kind of piece of advice and this new trend that we're seeing on YouTube, and that's videos with minimal editing. And most of these videos are talking head videos, just talking to the camera, where they're just kind of staying in their zone of genius, talking for like 20, 30 minutes, and then going in and cutting out all the dead space or just cutting out the mistakes. And that's really the only editing that they're using. And the crazy part is that they're doing minimal thumbnails along with the minimal editing. And the thumbnail is basically just a screenshot of them talking to the camera as well, with maybe a little bit of, touch up or whatever on the camera. But these videos are starting to trend and they're starting to get views. And it's a good thing for the platform, I think, overall. But what would be like kind of your advice on how to create one of these kind of videos, Grant, and kind of any kind of take that you have on it?
Sure. So with the minimal editing, right, there is less room to butter yourself up or put editing makeup on yourself, so to speak, right? So camera presence and the way that you speak is really important. So I would develop your ability to speak if you don't quite feel like it's there yet. It can take some time to talk in a way that feels compelling to a viewer. If you are soft spoken, if you say or a lot, it just takes a lot of practice. So if you maybe could take an improv class, or you can take an acting class, or even just get out there and socialize more, even just doing that, getting kind of past any social anxiety or whatever. I think your ability to speak clearly and concisely and with conviction is going to be your best friend here. Now, obviously, you can cut out dead space and kind of hype it up, but ultimately, your presence is going to be sensed by the audience, and that's going to be the most important thing when it comes to this video. You're the focal point as opposed to this highly edited show. Now, when I started on YouTube, I was creating highly edited content. I mean, I didn't feel like I was good at voiceover at all. My voiceover was just very, we'll call it niche. But there was a lot of like clips over it and funny pictures and things that we would Photoshop to make jokes. And there was just like a lot going on. And so the fact that my voiceover was really over the top and theatrical, some people liked that, some people didn't, but the point was there was all this other stuff going on that really filled the air and entertained you. And so even if my voiceover wasn't the best in the world, there was other things to focus on. So I would just say, the more natural your speaking voice is, the better chance you're going to have of succeeding with this type of content.
Yeah, those are good points. And also, I think it's kind of a little bit more boring, kind of harder to keep the viewer watching the video. So you got to make sure that like the words that come out your mouth are impactful,
Mm-hmm.
and that you kind of cut out all the fluff, right? If you just continue to go on these rants or these kind of off-topic things that aren't related to that actual video, then people are going to click away. And those are the things you need to delete out when you're doing that minimal editing. Just because you don't have all the graphics and stuff keeping viewers engaged. So,
Right.
or the B-roll, right? So that's definitely important. But you can definitely create a YouTube channel. I've seen the same guy, Meet Kevin, that has just very minimal editing from day one, and he's got millions of subscribers and does really well on YouTube. But he gives out really high value content about making money basically. So the next thing that if you're a beginner, I would recommend is that you do some minimal scripting, right? Like just hitting record and being able to deliver stuff that's high value and stuff is pretty challenging, but minimal scripting is where it's at. When it comes to minimal scripting, we're talking about, spending 10 minutes to write a hook that's actually word for word. We're talking 2 to 3 sentences that would actually keep the viewer and kind of give the information to the viewer. And that's the hook. And then just bullet points. And depending on your video, it could be 3 bullet points, it could be 10 bullet points. But I got this tip from Ali Abdal, who said that all his videos are just lists. It's just a list of bullet points, and then he just goes through the list. And kind of the sub tip to that would be putting little sub bullet points under each bullet point. So if you had 4 bullet points, each with 2 sub bullet points, you got 8 topics right there that you're going to talk about throughout that video and deliver on. And if you're in your zone of genius, then you'll be able to deliver pretty well on each of those without a script. And it's a lot more authentic that way as well. So this is my next tip. So Grant, how do you kind of balance staying on topic with keeping your content kind of spontaneous and stuff when you're recording without just being like A, B, C, D, using kind of minimal scripting? What would you say?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I think that's where editing comes in, right? So allow yourself to go on tangents. And if you're really feeling something, even though it's not in the script, because you thought of it while you were talking about some other point, then by all means go off on a tangent. And then when you're watching it later, you might have a different perspective. You might feel that actually this is really boring, or actually this is really interesting. And then you leave it in. So I would just say give yourself permission to speak how you want to speak, talk how you want to talk, cover the topics you want to cover, even if you didn't initially have that topic in your writing. So I think even like recording voiceover in heavily scripted content that I would make over the years, sometimes I would think of something as I was recording, and it would be a lot funnier than anything that was written, or a lot more interesting. And especially like I think when I was doing voiceover as opposed to like live action talking to a camera, I think that happened less with voiceover, and a lot more when talking to a camera. There's, I think, something about that, especially because if you're talking to a camera, you can't be looking at the script the whole time. So you kind of have to like internalize the lines and memorize the lines, which gives you, I think, more room to improv. Whereas, yeah, if you're doing voiceover for like a scripted type of thing, you're kind of reading the whole time, so you're not really in improv mode. You're not speaking from the heart necessarily. So yeah, I would just say don't be afraid to go on tangents. If you think of something funny as you're recording or something interesting, just talk about it, and you can always edit it out later.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip. The main key is editing it out later. I love that because yeah, that's just a great way to remove fluff and keep that viewer watching you guys. Remember, that's what it's all about. All
Hmm.
right, the next kind of tip, or if you're kind of stuck on, what should I make content about? I have no idea how I'd do this even. Try to document what you're doing, right? Or also known as like building in public. And Grant, when I thought of you as I wrote this down, because Grant is like a YouTube consultant, a YouTube coach, right? People come to him and they say, "Hey, I'm looking to grow on YouTube. What advice can you give me?" Takes a look at what their channel is and says, "Okay, we're going to try this new strategy, this." And that's interesting content. You know, Grant hopping on camera, building in public, saying, "Hey, I just want to share with you guys a few things that I learned this last week. How I was able to help this client get, double their view on their latest video." And then just talk about kind of how it went down. I know there's like client confidentiality stuff, so you'd have to be careful there. But building in public is something that I've always thought about doing as well with my video editing service, VidChops. I've always been like, man, I need to get on camera and talk about the struggles, the wins, the losses, the things I've learned about growing this business. And people love that kind of content. Building in public, documenting what you're doing is a great way to just come up with video topics. It's an endless flow of video topics, just talking about what you do. And there's this big trend on YouTube nowadays, anyways, where people don't want to know how to do something. They want to know how you did something. And
Mm.
Alex Hormozy talks about this. Stop making how to content, make how I content. And that seems to resonate a lot bit more. And you've seen the topics, right? How I grew my email list to 50,000, not how to grow an email list to 50,000.
Hmm.
And there's a lot more storytelling and stuff that can happen when you do that. So, anyways, I think that's a great one. Grant, what do you like about my idea about this documenting your day to day in your YouTube consultancy?
Hmm. Well, what I like about it is it feels more personal, and especially with YouTube, one thing I like to say, it's you tube. It's about you. What do you want? What have you been through? What is your life experience? So when it comes to a how-to video versus a how I video, I think how I feels more relatable and true because how to build an email list. Like when I see that title, I instantly imagine somebody who like Googled how to grow an email list and then they turned it into a YouTube video in hopes of building some YouTube channel, which like okay fine, but like that feels so much less interesting than hearing a story about someone who actually did it and who actually has stories to tell about it. So I think anytime you can include yourself in what you're talking about in your own life experience, I just think that's way better. I think it's more interesting. I think it's more relatable. I think you learn more from it as a viewer. You can kind of take in any mistakes that were made, or even just kind of the general feeling of what it's like to build something from scratch. I mean, it is kind of a weird feeling to do that. Like you're not on a predetermined path. You're out there on your own. And how did Alex Hermosi feel when he was doing it? That can be helpful information and a helpful perspective. So I would say A+. I love it, man.
Yeah, it's a great strategy. It's people love stories, right? Humans love stories. We want to be told stories. That was, the first piece of content ever created was a story, right? Way, 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 way,
Hmm.
way back in the ancestral days. And it's everything stays the same because there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you want to stick around for that reward at the end. So stories is where it's at. In any kind of online content, you should always be looking to create more stories. So it's a great piece of advice. Grant, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's just starting their YouTube journey, maybe they have 2, 3 videos online, what would be one piece of advice that you'd want to give them?
Hmm. I would say your shitty videos are good enough. Like, just, I think people are very concerned with making something that's perfect or making something that they want to go viral instantly, or like they just have too many expectations on what it should be. in my opinion, the most important thing isn't the video itself, it's the process. So like, how did you feel making that video? If it was this kind of excruciating, horrible experience, but the video came out really well, um, I would say focus more on making that process easier on you than just trying to make the next video by beating your head against the wall like you did that first video. So like the process of creation, in my opinion, is the most important thing. You know, how do you feel while you're doing it? If you're constantly angry at yourself or frustrated, then yeah, you might do well for a while. That might work as fuel, your kind of anger and frustration and negative emotions, but ultimately you're going to burn out if that's how you're doing things. So again, your shitty bad videos are not as bad as you think they are. Just keep posting them and improving upon them. You can always delete them later if you hate them, once you get your groove, so to speak. Because you just learn so much by doing. Like, you can watch all the video courses in the world, you can take all the classes in the world, but if you're not making things consistently, what do you actually know? Like, you don't know what it's like to be in the trenches. You don't know what it's like to get your hands dirty. You don't know what it's like to make something and then to know how you feel afterwards. Like, even just that experience, you know, it teaches you something. So yeah, just keep making things and don't focus too much on whether or not it's perfect. And you know, this is advice that I have betrayed myself. I would say, like, my passion project YouTube channel right now, I've been sitting on a video for a long time. I could probably finish it in like 2 hours and then post it, and it would be pretty good. But yeah, I just like it can be complicated. But again, that's kind of a passion project channel, and I feel like I've kind of been around the block with YouTube, so it's not, I don't know, it's not a priority, I guess. But don't be like me. Be like how I was 10 years ago. Don't be like how I am now.
Yeah, I mean, we all go through that too, where you feel like you're a perfectionist, right? The perfectionist mentality on YouTube is not good, everybody. Do not be a
Mhm.
perfectionist. Just kind of, hit record, see what you got, upload, and take the feedback and go from there. Get 1% better every day, and then you give yourself a chance to make it on YouTube. If you're not publishing, you don't give yourself that chance. So, all right, I hope you guys liked today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We've been growing our subscriber base, but we're trying to get more. And if you're listening to the audio version, you can follow us there as well. And we will see you guys in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.